Hi, and welcome to A Drummer's Guide to, the podcast all about the things that it takes to be a professional musician aside from actually playing your instrument. My name is Dolan Davies. I am a drummer and have been since 1999. I have been a professional since 2008 and helping others to do the same since 2018, and that's why we're here today. So, today's subject was... There's two parts to this subject, or the inspiration for it. So I was having a conversation with one of my coaching students last week, and basically it was around the discomfort of silence, should we say. Now, this can be interpreted as literal sitting in silence. This could be interpreted as leaving space when you're playing music, all that sort of stuff. And, you know, we had a really interesting conversation. It made me realize, me and this student, we have so many similarities. I can't begin to tell you. So everything that they were saying, I was like, yep. I totally get that. I have been there like 100%. And yeah, it was just really interesting being able to help someone with something that I've struggled with in the past, which is silence and sitting in silence. But anyway, so that kind of sparked something off. And I was like, maybe I should do an episode about this, because I feel like a lot of creatives have this, I don't want to say issue, but predisposition of not liking silence or being afraid of it. I think it's a very human trait, especially these days. But anyway, I'll get into this in a minute. But anyway, I also, the other day, I have this thing where, so I use ChatGPT a fair amount for various things, sort of like sometimes for inspiration for episodes or other things. And me being me, and this kind of like underpins exactly what I'm talking about. I was sat on the couch. I was probably listening to something, a podcast. The one that I'm obsessed with at the moment is My Favorite Murder, which I sort of keep coming back to. If you don't know, it's very funny and very interesting and quite terrifying. But anyway, and I thought, I'm going to, because I chat to ChatGPT about various things. Sometimes it's kind of psychological things or things that I'm struggling with or things like that, right? I find it very useful. And I, in my infinite wisdom, was like, ChatGPT, what are one of my blind spots that I could do to improve myself kind of vibe? I don't think I worded it that way, but it was something like that. And ChatGPT decided that there were two things that I kind of overlooked, should we say. The first is kind of being more compassionate with myself, kinder to myself, a softness with myself, and expecting a lot from myself, and maybe just, being nicer to myself, which is essentially something that my therapist says to me every week. But the second thing was sitting in silence, and I was like, really? Okay. And I was like, gosh darn it. Yeah, I was like, okay. So I personally have started this practice of like actively sitting in silence. I was doing it before. I haven't been doing it very regimentally, I suppose. I kind of, if I remember to do it, I will do it, sort of thing. But I thought, you know what, like, correct. I can recognize that I know that I have been, avoiding silence. I've gotten much, much better at embracing silent moments, especially in the last like 2.5 years. It's essentially the thing that has kind of like turned my life around in the best way possible, or turned it upside down, I should say, because so much has changed in the last 2.5 years. I can't begin to explain. And that partly has been through sitting in silence, therapy, all these different changes, la. But anyway, I thought that I would share my experience with avoiding silence, essentially, and hopefully being able to show why we do that, and also like how, if you're struggling with that, the benefits, essentially, and hopefully inspire you to maybe be brave, because it does take bravery to sit in silence. I 100% believe that. So I've written notes, so if I'm looking over here, I'm not being rude. I'm literally I don't want to miss out things on this subject, because I think it's actually a really important thing that I certainly have not really heard anyone or not many people speak about very like openly or publicly, or I don't know, maybe my algorithm's just not showing me it. So silence and the avoidance of, I think technology has made it very, very easy to avoid silence, let me tell you. So in terms of like what I do currently, what I have done for the last, I don't even know how long, I suppose as long as I've been playing drums, and certainly as long as things like Spotify have existed, so any sort of streaming service or anything like that, I have been avoiding silence since then. So for decades, I feel like, and there is nothing scarier to me, I don't think, than silence, but what brings that, my own thoughts, which I'm sure, well, I know that you probably can relate, unless you're very good at sitting in silence, I don't know, meditate, blah, 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 whatever. I feel like I've been avoiding silence since I started playing drums. I think that the drums, and I've spoken about this at length in various episodes, was the thing it was my coping mechanism for things that we all go through as kids, as teenagers, and that was my way of regaining some sort of control, because I felt completely out of control. And as a child, actually, I don't know if I've mentioned this, I'm sure I have. So I remember I was walking home from school alone, so I must have been like 7 or 8, something like that. And I really remember there was this kind of corrugated iron walkway across a bridge, right? And I remember distinctly grazing my hand on one side of it and feeling this compulsion to do it on the other side, like my other hand. And it became this slightly OCD thing of like, whatever happened to one side of my body had to happen to the other. So if I tapped, my other hand would have to tap, and and ideally it would be an even number. So often 4 would be the choice. Even to this day, I still have tendencies of that. I think it might be why I was drawn to drums, because there's a completeness and a kind of balance that happens to me with the drums. So maybe it was that. But anyway, that's the earliest thing that I can remember doing to try to have some sort of control over my life, because kids, innit? Kids, you don't have control. You have to do what your parents say. Kids in school, kids are mean, and they were mean, and I didn't know how to handle it, and this was my way of kind of handling it, I guess. Anyway, cut to being 11, I find the drums. I'm like, ooh, not only does this kind of, by then I managed to work my compulsions out of me slightly. I realized that logically it didn't make sense. You couldn't, like, for instance, you couldn't touch exactly the same part of your hand on both sides to make it even. It could never be truly even, and I kind of rationalized that. Anyway, then I found the drums. And that was my way of not having to face silence, because whenever I felt discomfort, whenever I found myself sitting and thinking about what was going on, how I was feeling, all these things, I was able to put my energies into something that took the silence away. And that was so invaluable, potentially life-saving, I believe. I really do believe that for me. And that's kind of where it started. And then obviously it kind of escalated into a career. It went outside of just playing the drums. It was like starting a business and, obviously creating a career and, all the things that come along with that. And what that meant was I could stay busy to avoid that stillness. And, it was very useful in that it did afford me a career. However, for my mental health, incredibly destructive, like the most destructive. And I truly believe that my lack of ability to sit with my own uncomfortable emotions was a very large contributing factor to why I suffered with depression so badly. because I would just try and avoid these uncomfortable feelings, and what would happen was they would just get louder, more aggressive, and they would, and so many things were going on all at once that the only way I can describe it is that it became this like tidal wave that then pulled me under. I didn't have any choice. I didn't even know what was happening. I didn't know why it was happening, because all these things just amalgamated into this giant wave, and there I would go under it, and I wouldn't be able to see the surface. I wouldn't know if I was ever going to come up from the surface. I just, I was at the mercy of this thing that I couldn't control, all because I was trying to control it incrementally every day. So anyway, that's kind of my, and obviously it's very subjective experience with my lack of ability to sit in silence. But I thought that it would be worth kind of just, exploring that a little bit. I think I'm going to check my notes because I want to make sure. I want to make sure that I'm covering things. So yes, that was my way of avoiding discomfort, essentially. And I looked it up because I wanted to make sure that I kind of, had some actual facts to this rather than just my subjective, like, this is what happened to me. But apparently when you sit in silence and these negative thoughts come about, it actually, if you're not used to doing that, it actually, your nervous system actually has what do you call it? It has a fight or flight response. That's what I'm trying to say. It has a literal fight or flight response. So if you sit with those negative feelings, those negative thoughts, if you're replaying conversations over in your head and all of that sort of stuff, it makes you feel unsafe. It makes you want to flee or fight or whatever. And that is why modern technology, especially social media, is very, very useful, because even to this day, like, I'm trying to practice this like very consciously, but even I noticed that when I feel uncomfortable, I was doing it yesterday. So I was watching the newest monster series about Ed Gein. Oh my god, it's awful. It's so awful and really hard to watch. It's fascinating, but it's hard. It's a tough watch. And I'm not good with like horror, and there's some little jumpy potentially moments in it, like as in I don't think they actually even are, but it gives me that same discomfort. See, look, even just thinking about it, I'm fiddling with my hat. I reach for my phone because I feel so uncomfortable and I can't deal with the tension and the potential jumpiness and what's about to happen and not knowing what's about to happen. I have to reach for my phone to look at something to divert my attention because I'm so uncomfortable. And obviously it's created that way, it's trying to elicit those things, which is fine, whatever. But I certainly have exactly the same response when I'm sitting with uncomfortable thoughts. And I find myself, I feel myself reaching for my phone. I'm like, what are you doing? Just stay present. It's fine. Because like I say, we have these irrational thoughts that this discomfort is going to literally kill us. That fight or flight response is because we are in danger. It's a whole thing, which is wild to me. It's wild when you think about it just in a logical way. It's like, oh my gosh, right, our thoughts are not going to kill us. We are not in danger. In saying that, one of the biggest reasons I would avoid my sitting and thinking about my thoughts is that because I struggled with depression, and I was able to sit with my thoughts after I started medication. First of all, biggest thing ever, like life-changing. And then once I found my therapist that I adore, she said to me, it might be worth doing, sort of thing. It's only then that I really was able to sit in those thoughts. But even then, because I had this experience of depression, I was so terrified that by allowing these thoughts to happen, that tidal wave would come and get me, as it were. And it was just a matter of time. And, then it would pull me under again and I wouldn't know how to get out of it or like how long it was going to last. And the fear of that was so great that I would do anything. I would do anything to avoid that. I would never wish that upon any person. It's horrendous. It's a horrendous place to be. And yeah, I was so scared of that happening again. And I would have that fight or flight response. Now, what the interesting thing was by sitting in silence and actually allowing these sometimes negative thoughts to come and go and just allow them to be. And I'm not talking like, I wasn't meditating or anything like that. I was just sitting, because I've tried meditation. It doesn't work for me. It doesn't. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. I don't know. But I just sit and I stare out the window. That's what I do. And I just allow my brain to go where it needs to go. But anyway, what happened was these feelings were so much smaller than that giant tidal wave. And like I say, I believe that it's because I was ignoring them. They were sort of all ganging up on me and creating this tidal wave so that I would actually pay attention. Whereas now it's kind of like, yeah, I have moments of feeling down or, and whereas before I would try to avoid it by getting busy, which would create more strength. I'm trying to think. There's an analogy, a Star Wars analogy in here somewhere, and I can't remember what it is. It's about Darth Vader turning to the dark side, or Anakin rather turning to the dark side, and Luke, like Darth Vader trying to get Luke to the dark side. Oh, and I can't remember what it is. But anyway, you know what I'm trying to say. It just feeds it if you avoid it. But if you actually just sit with it and just allow it, it kind of goes, it kind of disappears. And like I say, sometimes, yeah, I might have a whole day where I feel a bit meh. But by, I want to say almost admitting that, it takes a bit of the power out of it for me. And actually having people around me that I can tell about it. So it's not this shameful secret. Because that's the other thing. It felt shameful to me to feel a negative way about something, especially when it came to the fact that, and actually I've had someone like email me recently saying this, where they feel that because they get to do what they love as a living, they feel shame around feeling bad or feeling down or feeling tired even. And that is I had exactly the same feeling. To a degree I still do, but this thing of like, I don't deserve to feel bad. I shouldn't be allowed to. How dare I feel down? How dare I feel depressed? I get to do what I love for a living. Not many people can say that. And here's me seeming all ungrateful because I feel sad right now. And that's just not it. Like, career is separate from being human. We're all human. We all have a spectrum of emotions. And as soon as you start deflecting away from those because you don't feel you deserve to feel that way, or you don't want to feel that way, or you don't want to face it, whatever the reason, it's only going to make it grow until you will pay attention. And I do feel that just taking that bit of time every day for a bit of silence really does it's not even about minimizing it. It's just about allowing it to flow, like you're not creating blockages. Another interesting thing that I read was that the ability of not sitting in silence or always being busy is very much a trait of perfectionists and high achievers. So again, can relate, because it's this idea of feeling out of control. When you sit in silence and just allow things to flow, you don't know what's going to come up. That is terrifying. Feeling out of control, I have that too. It is very, very scary. Okay, I'm going to tell you, this is so dumb. I can't believe I'm sharing this. Okay, right, here we go. So, I'm a control freak. I don't like feeling out of control. You know this about me. But to the point that I identified myself as having a vomiting phobia, right? For all of my life. And I've been seeing this therapist that I'm seeing now for the last 2.5 years even, right? Love her. We have spoken at length about so many different things. She has changed my life and given me those kind of opportunities to really just exist as a human, which is actually really hard for me. But anyway, I came to her a couple of weeks ago and I said, look, there's something I've been avoiding for all the time that we've been talking. And I could see her eyes like going wide, like, oh my goodness, what she's about to say. And I said, I have a vomiting phobia. And I think that it's actually really affecting my life and what's possible for me, what I'm allowing myself to do, because I'm trying to avoid either people being sick or me being sick or blah, 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 blah. Anyway, I won't go into it much further than that. But what we uncovered is, in fact, I do not have a vomiting phobia. Nobody likes being sick. If they do, there's something else possibly going on. But what it was, the fear purely was being out of control. And we spoke about this and, it made a lot of sense to me. Anyway, I don't know whether I've said this before, so I'm not religious. I think you know that. But I do believe in energy. I believe in the universe, all that, hippie stuff. I really do. Let me tell you, the universe or God or whatever you want to say has a sense of humor, because lo and behold, 5 days later, as someone who is never sick, like could count on my hands the amount of times that I've been sick, I was sick 4 days later. And it was really interesting because I just kept telling myself, you're just you're allowed to be out of control. And by doing that, it gave me such a different experience. Like before, I would be panicky. There was this like overwhelming anxiety and all of this. And whilst, don't get me wrong, I didn't enjoy it, it wasn't fun, I handled it and I was able to handle it. And I feel like it's the same sort of feeling with stillness and just facing these fears, essentially, of, just facing these thoughts and stuff like that. And it is about being out of control. So I think allowing that, as a perfectionist, if you are a perfectionist, a recovering perfectionist, a high achiever, or whatever else, I think just acknowledging that maybe that's part of it could be really useful, but also the freedom that comes from not feeling like you have to be in control the whole time, because it is a trait of people that, like I say, and a lot of creatives, we are just very, very perfectionist driven, high achieving, all those sorts of things. So allowing yourself that kind of lack of control, I think just knowing that, hopefully that will help with just letting things flow. You don't need to control the thoughts. There was someone that I was speaking to and they were saying that if they do sit and actually think about things, they find themselves having conversations with the thoughts that they're having. And I think engaging in that is, again, trying to control the narrative. And the point of sitting with silence and actually just listening or allowing these things to flow, as I understand it. Because again, I was just reading into this out of curiosity and also because I wanted to obviously bring facts. I say facts as we know them right now. They may change, but what that sitting and allowing these things to happen are actually more about processing emotions, not trying to change them necessarily, but it's more about integrating yourself with your emotions. And I find that really interesting. There's also another side to this that I found incredibly helpful, and this was to do with music. And I've spoken about this before, but one of the best things that I ever did for my playing was taking time to just sit behind the drums and play with no agenda, with nothing informing me, no click track, no music, no nothing, silence, me and my drums, and that was it. When I tell you, it's the scariest thing I've ever done as a drummer, 100%, because what happened was, as soon as I started playing, all those thoughts, all those voices were telling me, you're rubbish, you can't do this, you can't do that, like, who are you? You can't even just play, you have to play when there's other musicians in the room, or, all these self-doubt sort of voices popped up. But I sort of persevered with it, and what ended up happening was it gave me the space and the opportunity, not just to reconnect with my instrument, which was wonderful, it's really, really nice. It also gave me the opportunity to almost challenge these voices, but not with words, but just exploration, because I'm sure that you have this too. If you're playing a lot or even a little, the majority of what I was, no, in fact, all of what I was playing was either learning someone's material for a gig that was coming up, or it was on the gig reacting to what was happening on stage and just, playing. But what I never gave myself the time to do since I was a child was actually explore the instrument and how I wanted to play and what I wanted to play. And just, I think it's just what happens when you become a professional, is that you don't have as much time to explore in that way. And I sort of just wanted to give myself that time. But anyway, what happened was, all these narratives that I'd been telling myself as a player, I'm not this type of player, I'm this type of player, you can't do that, you can't do this, da-da-da-da-da. I started challenging it, and not even intentionally. I just started doing it and exploring. And what happened was, it made my understanding of myself as a drummer so much wider than what I thought I was, which was really empowering. It was really lovely. So I do, like, in terms of like stillness with your instrument, I think that there is also something in that, creating that space to just explore your instrument and allow those thoughts to happen. Like, just let them go, like, just do it. Let them run their own race while you just play for you, So I think that there's definitely an element of that. And also, if you want to get into, gigs and all that sort of stuff, I know that personally, when I feel insecure and I hear those voices going, the first thing that I want to do is overplay, play a flashy fill, or not that I can really do that. I mean, I can, but I do curb myself, luckily. But yeah, when I feel insecure, I try to overplay. I think that's a very normal reaction. I think it's a very human reaction. But what I will say is that not only my favorite performances, but my favorite performers are the ones that, they play less, but they understand space and they play with the space. And that is the thing that I find gets my soul. It isn't the amount of notes. When I see someone that is either overplaying or they're in a situation where there are many notes being played, I have about 5 seconds where I'm like, wow, that's really impressive. And then after that, I'm like, it doesn't mean anything to me. But if you give me space in a song, I literally collapse on the floor because I feel so much with that space. And maybe that's something to do with the power of sitting with that silence. But yeah, anyway, I just think it's a really interesting thing to kind of like bring over to your playing too, right? Let me check my notes just to check. Oh, that's the other thing I was going to say. So here's another problem with sitting with silence, and especially if you're like creating a career and doing all that. Unfortunately, society definitely praises productivity, and what that means is that, and this was me for the first, I don't even know how, wait, hold on. When did I start playing? 99. Where are we now? 2025. Okay, 26 years. So let's say for the 23 years of my playing, I'm not going to say career, because obviously I wasn't doing it professionally when I started, but I was praised for, and we all are, I think, for producing and for being busy, one of the most terrible, it's not terrible. Okay, I know that when people would say, oh, how are you? My immediate reaction was, oh, I'm really tired. Yeah, really busy. And even if I didn't personally feel that I was, because I never felt like I was doing enough, I knew that there was value to people. Like, I only felt valuable if they saw that I was doing a lot of work, if I was busy, if I was producing, whether that was, practicing, or in the early days, or playing with lots of different bands, as many different artists as I can, or maybe it was even creating social media content. People would say, oh, like, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you create so much content. And I would wear that with such pride, where actually what was happening is because I was so scared of stopping and not producing and therefore not being valuable Whereas sitting in silence and not producing and just being, it makes you question your identity. It makes you question your value because you're sitting there doing something non-productive for 10 minutes. Oh, you must be a terrible person. That was where my brain went. But as I've learned over the last few years, actually, it's so essential because there were things in my life that were so wrong, that I was so avoiding, that I was doing everything I could to avoid. And if I'd have just sat and reflected for a few minutes a day, I would have noticed this way before it became such a big hindrance to my life. That's the only word I can use, hindrance. And I feel like I could have been healthier a lot earlier. Now, I am where I am. I'm not sad about it. I've learned so much through these things. But now, let me tell you, if I notice things that are not right or are out of alignment, I should say, with who I am, I'm going to listen to that. It's still hard, and sometimes I find myself avoiding it, but at least I recognize a little bit more like, oh, I think I'm trying to avoid something here. Maybe I should just sit down in silence and just shush. Because I'm the person that, I listen to podcasts almost constantly, or I'm watching something like that Ed Gein thing, which is awful, but very compelling. Or, even if I go for a walk, I'm listening to something. Or I'm always like, there's always input going in. And it's partly because I love to learn. But again, that comes down to only feeling valuable if you have information to give, blah, blah, blah. And just to stop the input and just allow things to settle, allow emotions to process, thoughts, feelings, memories to process, and just let them align with who you are is actually really essential, but it is terrifying. There's also a thing about actually, what do you call it? I've written it down. Where is it? Da, 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 da. Yeah, like sitting with the discomfort and resilience. That's the word I'm looking for. Like building emotional resilience with yourself, I think is really, really important. And that is part of it. And it's about recognizing, yeah, this is going to suck. It might really hurt. It might be really uncomfortable. But by sitting with yourself for, say, 10 minutes, you teach yourself that you can, and you can be with yourself. And there is something about, and I found this with my own work, is like trusting yourself. And also there builds a connection of like, do you know what? I'm quite happy sitting with myself. It might be uncomfortable, but I can trust myself. So therefore, it's fine. And therefore, anything that happens, I know I'll be all right, and it might be hard and it might be uncomfortable. I know I'll be okay because I can sit with myself. I can rely on myself. And at the end of the day, we're all with ourselves 24 hours a day. Yes, it's an obvious thing and a bit of an old trope. But if you can't even be with yourself, I think that, no, in my experience, that's led to problems, big problems, potentially life-altering problems. Well, they were life-altering in some respects. And I think it's such a... It sounds so simple. It's so incredibly hard. I find it so incredibly hard. And I really hope there's not someone listening right now that's going, this is so easy. What are you talking about? Well, I hope that there is. I hope it is easy for you. But let me tell you, in my experience, the majority of people that I speak to, hard. So hard. There's one final thing before I sort of wrap up that I just wanted to leave on. Well, there's two things, actually. Let me just check that I haven't missed anything. I think we're good. Yeah, we're good. The last thing that I wanted to just say, which I thought was really interesting because it definitely reflects, I read it and I was like, oh my God, I've never heard it put that way. And yet this is exactly how I felt and how I feel. And this is it. So if you can only take one thing from this, I would say, sit through the discomfort and reclaim the energy the constant motion to avoid it was burning up. No wonder I was exhausted the whole time. I was trying to avoid just sitting down with myself for 10 minutes. And that in turn would actually lead me to a more integrated, relaxed, not as stressed, not as trying to be in control all the time life. No wonder I was exhausted. I was running 24 hours a day, running away from myself. I'm still tired, but nowhere near as tired now. Actually, do you know what? For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm finally getting my energy levels back. And maybe it is because it's been 30, how old am I? 38, no, I'm 38 now. 36, 35 years of running away. Maybe that's unfair, but you know what I'm trying to say. Like, I'm finally not running away, and I'm finally regaining a bit of energy, certainly some compassion. There's a long way to go with that. Like, my goodness, I'm still harsh to myself, but I don't recognize it yet. So I'm still working on that. But I think just sitting with yourself is such a huge, like, it will do nothing but benefit you. And it will be hard, like I say, incredibly hard. So here's my final thing I want to leave you with. You're gonna hate me. So I invite you to sit with me for 2 minutes in silence. Now, if you're like, nope, not doing it, recognize that. That's fine. If you want to move on, fine. But if you're like, oh, I'll do that later, recognize that too, because if you're anything like me, later will never come. So if you want to come do the uncomfortable thing with me just for 2 minutes and then we'll wrap up, then please stay. If not, then it's been lovely seeing you. Please have a think about this and maybe re-listen to this and maybe do the 2 minutes. But anyway, I'm going to set a 2-minute timer and then we will do our thing. Okay, so 2 minutes silence. I'm going to look out the window. So feel free to, if you're driving, look at the road. But yeah, just sit in silence for 2 minutes with you. Okay, so hey Google, set a timer for 2 minutes.
Okay, 2 minutes. Starting now.
Stop. Okay, I don't know about you, that was so weird. Okay, that was horrid. My brain was just going, this episode's a mess. You're not going to have helped anyone. They're all going to think you're mad. Yeah, amongst other various things. Mainly that I was like suddenly really aware of the fact that I was probably looking really like gormed out. So like gormy. But anyway, is what it is. So I hope that that's helped you in some way. I do invite you to do that on the regular if you are able. And yeah, I hope that this has helped in some way. I also hope that there was some sort of coherence because like I say, my brain is just going, nope, it was a mess. But hopefully not. We shall see. This is the other thing I realized. I don't usually reflect on an episode. I literally stop, put it on my computer, do all the things, get it out. I don't think about it until maybe later on. So to think about it so close to the episode. Interesting. Let's use that word. I think interesting is my most favorite word. But anyway, I'm going to leave you on that note. If you have enjoyed this episode, please do feel free to like, share and subscribe. If you have a specific subject you'd like me to cover, a question you'd like to ask me, or do you know what, even if you just want to share a story, a mad story about your own sort of like music career, then please do head over to emilydrums.com/AMA, as in ask me anything, but share with me whatever you fancy. And then if you'd like to book in for some one-on-one coaching, if you'd like to take the next step into your career and where you want to be, find out where you want to be, how you're going to do it, like the practical steps that you might feel like you're missing, then book in for a free discovery call with me. If you go to emilydrums.com, you can do that over there. And if you'd like to join me on any live hangs that I'm doing, then you can find out about those when the next one is by following me over on Instagram. If you go to @HeyEmilyDrums. But anyway, I hope you're well wherever you are, whatever you're up to, and I shall see you next time for another subject. All right, sending you lots of love and lots of silence. All right, bye.